Salut tout le monde, bienvenue à un autre stream de Tarkov, bien sûr. Aujourd'hui, on va continuer de chasser les goons. On va avoir du fun. Et on va mourir, bien sûr. J'espère que vous êtes prêts pour ça. En background, je suis après à écouter un podcast de John Mearsheimer avec Lex Friedman. Donc, si vous ne connaissez pas Lex Friedman, excellent podcaster. Il toujours des invités très intéressants, des questions qui vous font questionner la réalité. Donc, j'espère que vous allez enjoyer. C'est en anglais, mais c'est censé être bilingue au Québec et au Canada. Donc, voilà. C'est votre chance.
Great that it is impossible to move the Israelis in that direction. And the Israelis here are the key players, more so than the Palestinians, because it's the Israelis who control Greater Israel. It's the Israelis who you have to convince. Now, I want to be clear here. You also ultimately have to get around the fact that Hamas, right, is not committed to a two-state solution. But I think that problem could be dealt with. It's important to understand that Arafat
quand même bien, mais pas ce qu'on voulait.
was adamantly opposed to a two-state solution, but Arafat came around to understand that that was really the only hope for settling this, and he became a proponent of a two-state solution. And that's true of Mahmoud Abbas, who runs the PA in the West Bank. It's not true of Hamas at this point in time. They want a one-state solution. They want a Palestinian state. And of course, the Israelis want a one-state solution too, which is a Jewish state that controls all of Greater Israel. So the question is, can you get some sort of agreement? And I think to get to the nub of your question,
tu peux même faire de mieux avec ça. Ça vaut pas la peine.
It's almost impossible to imagine that happening anytime soon.
The cynical perspective here is that those in power benefit from conflict, while the people on both sides suffer. Is there a degree of truth to that? Or for the people in power to maintain power, conflict needs to continue?
No, I don't believe that. I mean, just to take the Netanyahu government or any Israeli government that maintains the occupation, what you want is you want a Palestinian population that submits to Israeli domination of Greater Israel. You don't want resistance. You don't want an intifada. You don't want what happened on October 7th. In fact, I think one of the principal reasons that the Israelis are pounding Gaza and killing huge numbers of civilians, punishing the civilian population in ways that clearly violate the laws of war, is because they want the Palestinians to understand that they are not allowed to rise up and resist the occupation. That's their goal. So I think the Israelis would prefer that the Palestinians roll over and accept submission. In terms of the people who live in Gaza, to include the elites, and the people who live in the West Bank, to include the elites, they would much prefer to move to some sort of situation where the Palestinians have a state of their own. I think in the case of the PA, under Abbas, they would accept a two-state solution. I think what at this point in time Hamas wants is a one-state solution, but they want peace. All of them want peace. The two different sets of leadership in Palestine and the Israelis.
So you think Hamas wants peace?
Sure, but on its own terms. That's the point.
What does peace look like for Hamas?
At this point in time, I think peace basically means a greater Israel controlled by Palestine or Palestinians.
Okay. So essentially, I mean, it's the whole land is called Palestine and there's no Israel.
I think at this point in time, that's their principal goal. I do believe, and there have been hints over time, Jimmy Carter has said this, that Hamas can be convinced that a two-state solution, assuming that the Palestinians get a viable state of their own, that Hamas would buy into that.
Les munitions sont revenues.
Can we say that with a high degree of certainty? No. But I think the Israelis should have pursued that possibility. They should have worked with Abbas. They should have worked with Hamas to do everything they can to facilitate a two-state solution. Because I think ultimately that's in Israel's interest. Now, the Israeli government and most Israelis at this point in time, I believe, don't agree with that.
What do you think of Israel starting the ground invasion of Gaza recently on October 27th?
The question is, should they continue until they have finally defeated Hamas? There are all sorts of reports in the media, including in the Israeli media, that they're not going to be allowed by the United States to continue this offensive for much more than a few weeks. The Israelis have been saying it's going to take, in the best of all possible worlds, a number of months, if not a year, to finish off Hamas. Well, it doesn't look like they're going to have enough time to do that. I doubt whether they can finish off Hamas even if they're given the time. I think they're going to run into fierce resistance. And when they run into fierce resistance and large numbers of Israelis start to die, they'll lose their appetite for this. And the Israelis surely know at this point in time that even if they finish off Hamas, even if I'm wrong and they're able to finish off Hamas, another group is going to rise up to resist the occupation. The idea that you can use what Zeev Jabotinsky called the Iron Wall to beat the Palestinians into submission is delusional. It's just not going to happen. The Palestinians want a state of their own. They don't want to live under occupation. And there's no military solution for Israel here. There has to be a political solution. And the only viable political solution is a two-state solution. I mean, you can't go to democracy. You can't go to a situation where you give the Palestinians equal rights inside of Greater Israel, in large part because there are now as many Palestinians as there are Israeli Jews. And over time, the demographic balance shifts against the Israeli Jews and in favor of the Palestinians, in which case you'll end up with a Palestinian state in Greater Israel. So, democracy for all doesn't work. The Israelis, I believe, are quite interested in ethnic cleansing. I think they saw this this recent set of events as an opportunity to cleanse Gaza, but that's not going to happen. The Jordanians and the Egyptians have made it clear that that's not happening. The United States has now made it clear that that's not happening. And the Palestinians will not leave. They'll die in place. So ethnic cleansing doesn't work. So you're really left with two alternatives, a two-state solution or a Greater Israel that is effectively an apartheid state. I mean, that's what the occupation has led to. And all sorts of people have been predicting this for a long, long time. And you've now reached the point, here in the United States, if you say that Israel's an apartheid state, that's going to get you into all sorts of trouble. But the fact is that Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, and B'Tselem, which is the leading Israeli human rights group, all three of those institutions or organizations have issued detailed reports making the case that Israel is an apartheid state. Furthermore, if you read the Israeli media, right, all sorts of Israelis, including Israeli leaders.
Non, on va voir si les goons sont là. J'ai failli les tuer tantôt. Ouais, juste une petite lumière dessus. pas aussi précis que le laser, mais ça peut faire la job pareil. Je pense qu'ils sont pas là, hein, sinon je les aurais vus. Ça, c'est des scavs. J'ai pas remarqué si j'ai du packet loss. Ça fait du bruit, ce gun-là, quand tu vises. Trop cher. Des balles, ça. Bon. Outskirts. On va descendre, on va faire le tour en arrière du bunker. C'est pas mal de grenades, mais ça a l'air d'être des montagnes, pas U50, mais plus loin derrière. Après moi, c'est du monde. C'est du monde qui va chasser le petit. Oh 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 oh. pense que c'est mort ça. Oh, 2 petits relais, ça vaut cher, ça se fait en plus. Les nails valent cher, toi, à cette heure. Non, non, t'en dis quoi en arrière. Je vais faire le tour. Je suis pas mal sûr que j'ai entendu quelqu'un. J'ai manqué du sucre et tout, ça serait pas d'aller le rechercher, hein, mais... Avec l'an... Je suis pas mal sûr que j'ai entendu quelqu'un. C'est lui qui me suivait? Ça m'étonnerait bien gros, man. Ça, c'est un K47 qui a tiré. J'en ai me placer au loin. Je suis pas mal sûr. Ça, c'est le gars que j'ai tué, je pense, tantôt. Pas en astuce, ce scope-là, en tout cas, là. J'ai l'impression que ça va être quelqu'un qui campe pas loin, là. Définitivement de quoi là, là? Je sais pas s'il y a des barils dans ce coin-là. Ah, il y a quelque chose là. Définitivement quelque chose là. mort, ça. Peut-être un baril. Non, un baril, là, je sais pas trop, les yo. Je sais pas c'est quel, mais ça doit être un baril. Ton chum, man. C'est le gars que j'ai tué là-bas. Bois ton jus. What? Quand même aller checker l'autre body, j'ai tué tout là. L'armure, j'ai pogné, c'est quand même merdique là, comme armure. Je vais peut-être la dropper vu que c'est lourd pareil. C'est lourd, j'ai pas vraiment besoin d'armure là. J'avais un MK47 tout là. Clairement lui j'ai entendu en arrière de moi là. Faut pas catcher, je l'ai flanqué. Lui, il m'arrête de foncer là avec son MK47. Ça, c'est 2 dead bodies que j'ai fait. Je vais spotter ça un petit peu tantôt. Je l'ai tué ou non, gars? C'est moi qui tire ces balles-là, ouais. Hein? Nice. Oh, that's sexy, man. J'aime ton gun, dude. Il est droit dans les yeux, man. C'est ça que c'est tout. La FMG pour elle là-dedans. C'est de la pépé, je pense. Je l'ai pogné, ça vaut quand même la peine, là. Oui, ton petit sac à dos, puis un peu de net. Ça. Je savais que j'avais entendu quelqu'un. Ah, nice, mais je trouve qu'il a mis le standard grip. Genre, il manque pas de trucs sur son gun. Là. Il n'y a même pas de. Il n'y a même pas de foregrip. Ça, pour un niveau 49, là, je comprends pas que tu n'aurais pas de foregrip. Là. C'est tentant là, de. Ah, mon petit combo là, double dust pour hôpital. Too bad qu'il n'y avait pas de goons. Mais c'est pas surprenant là. Ah, c'est ça, je tirais dessus. Okay. Le deck, ça. C'est des meds, ça, que je vais pas pogner, je m'en sac. semble qu'ils ont changé la map, là. C'était pas comme... T'avais pas de cover ici avant, là. Je suis pas mal sûr qu'ils ont rajouté cette petite butte-là, puis... les armes, là. Je suis pas mal sûr qu'il y avait pas autant d'armes avant, là. Avant, je sais pas c'est quand qu'ils ont rajouté, là, mais je suis pas mal sûr qu'il y a un temps qui c'était pas là, là. Bon. Donc, pas de goons, mais 2 kills, c'est quand même bien. DVL, MK47 de looter. Ça se prend bien pareil. Au moins, c'est ainsi la wipe, les gros players sont genre en train de chasser les goons, donc c'est sûr que si je vois où que les goons sont souvent, ben, il y a des bonnes chances que je tombe sur des players qui sont guéris. Je sais pas qu'est-ce que tu fais avec un DVL, mais d'après moi, le gars du DVL il était juste campé là depuis le début. Là. Ça, c'est un scav, parce qu'il s'est mis à se déplacer juste au moment où j'avais l'angle dessus puis le visage. Je tourne puis je descends en bas. C'est classique scav AI, là. Je sais pas c'est à quel... C'est où qui commence les mêmes. Ouais. On va attendre d'apprendre notre souffle parce qu'on est une grosse patate. C'est pas mal, ici les campers souvent. Pas juste 15 minutes. Prendre un petit break. J'ai assez d'eau pour que ça, je vais être correct. C'est trop vert. On va attendre que la stam revienne encore. Quand même plein raide là. Ça a coûté cher récemment, pardon. Chasser les goons, man, ça coûte cher assez rapidement. Là. Je sais pas s'il y a de quoi je pourrais pogner, I guess. J'arrive à sortir, c'est ce qui me fait chier. Je veux pas partir à pogner une drogue pour ça, là. Scan. Quand même assez tranquille. Genre, j'ai même pas de body, body de scab, tu sais. C'est long, man, à reprendre ton stamina, là. On arrive à sortir, là. Ça va être clear. Aucune signature sur la thermique. What the fuck? Y'a quelqu'un qui vient de mourir en avant de moi, man. What the fuck, dude? Y'a quelqu'un qui vient de mourir, man. Quelqu'un qui vient de pogner 2 mines en avant de moi. N'importe quoi, dude.
Refer to Israel as an apartheid state. It's not that unusual to hear that term used in Israel. This is disastrous for Israel, in my opinion. And Steve Walt and I said this, by the way, when we wrote the Israel lobby, that Israel is an apartheid state, which is equivalent to Israel as an occupier, is not good for Israel. And that brings us back to the two-state solution. But as you and I were talking about a few minutes ago, it's hard to see how you get a two-state solution.
Ouais.
And the end result of this conversation is utter despair.
Because the path to a two-state solution is blocked by the amount of hate that's created by civilian deaths.
Well, that plus the fact that the Israeli government is filled with people who have no interest in a two-state solution. They're ideologically deeply committed to a greater Israel.
Bon,
They
AK-47,
want
je
all the
garde
land
ça.
between the Jordan River and the
Oui, je vais
Mediterranean
l'enlever.
Sea to be part of a Jewish state. They're just ideologically committed to that.
Comme ça.
And of course, as we were talking about before with regard to Hamas, Hamas wants everything between the river
DVA,
and
je
the
pense que je vais le
sea
vendre.
to be a Palestinian state. And, you know, when you have two sides with those kinds of views, right, you're in deep trouble because there's little room for compromise. So what you have to do to get this to work is you have to convince the Israelis that it's in their interest to have a two-state solution. And you've already taken care of the PA on this front, the Palestinian Authority, but you've got to convince Hamas that its maximalist goals are not going to work, and it's in its interest to follow in the footsteps of Arafat and accept a two-state solution. But even if you do that at this point, let's say that, there's a lot of willingness intellectually on both sides to do that. The problem is that the hatred that has been fueled by this recent this ongoing conflict is so great that it's just hard to imagine how you can make a two-state solution work at this juncture. That's why I've sort of taken to saying, and I hope I'm wrong here, that, on the two-state solution, that boat has sailed. It's just, it's no longer possible.
Well, again, I believe in leadership, and there's other parties at play here, other nations, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, other players in the Middle East that can help. That can help through a normalization of relationships and these kinds of things. There's always hope, like you said, slither of hope.
Slither of hope.
I think human civilization progresses forward by taking advantage of all the slithers. Let me ask you about, you mentioned the Israel lobby. You wrote a book. The most controversial book on the topic.
Not probably. Clearly the most controversial book I ever wrote.
So you've criticized the Israel lobby in the United States for influencing U.S. policy in the Middle East. Can you explain what the Israel lobby is, their influence, and your criticism over the past, let's say, a couple decades?
Well, the argument that Steve Walt and I made, actually we wrote an article first, and which appeared in the London Review of Books, and then we wrote the book itself. Our argument is that the lobby is a loose coalition of individuals and organizations that push American policy in a pro-Israel direction.
Sont trop slow.
And basically the lobby is interested in getting getting the United States, and here we're talking mainly about the American government, to support Israel no matter what Israel does.
Nice.
And our argument is that if you look at the relationship between the United States and Israel, it's unprecedented in modern history. This is the closest relationship that you can find between any two countries in recorded history. It's truly amazing the extent to which Israel and the United States are joined at the hip. And we support Israel no matter what, almost all the time. Our argument is that is largely due to the influence of the lobby. The lobby is an extremely powerful
spot
It's very important to understand that the American ways that allow interest groups of all sorts to wield great influence. So in the United States, you have an interest group or a lobby like the National Rifle Association that makes it well nigh impossible to get gun control, right? And so with the Israel lobby, you have this group of individuals and organizations that wield enormous influence on U.S. policy toward the Middle East. And this is not surprising given the nature of the American political system. So our argument is that the lobby is not doing anything that's illegal or illicit or immoral or unethical. It's just a good old-fashioned American interest group. And it just happens to be extremely powerful. And our argument is that this is not good for the United States because no two countries have the same interests all the time. And when our interests conflict with Israel's interests, we should be able to do what we think is in our national interest, in America's national interest. But the lobby tends to conflate America's national interests with Israel's national interests and wants the United States to support Israel no matter what. We also argue, and I cannot emphasize this enough given what's going on in the world today, the lobby's effects. The lobby has not been pushing policies that are in Israel's interest. So our argument is that the lobby
la face qu'il y a, man. Malheureusement, je peux pas share pour une raison que je connais pas. Probablement, comme essayer de share sur Netflix ou whatever, il y a comme une protection quelconque. Là.
Every president since Jimmy Carter has tried to do, as I said before,
moi, je pense que je sais en fait ce que je vais faire.
to foster a two-state solution.
Je pense qu'il faut que je parte Spotify en admin. Je pense que ça va marcher. Là.
To push Israel, which is the dominant player in greater Israel,
marche toujours pas.
push Israel to accept the two-state solution. And we have run into huge resistance from the lobby whenever we tried to, let's be blunt about it, coerce Israel, right? In a perfect world where there was no lobby and an American president was free to put pressure on Israel, to coerce Israel, I believe we would have gone a long way towards getting two-state solution. And I believe this would have been in Israel's interest.
Mm-hmm.
But we couldn't get a two-state solution because it was almost impossible to put meaningful pressure on Israel because of the lobby. So this was not in Israel's interest, and it was not in America's interest. And that was the argument that we made. And we, of course, got huge pushback for making that argument.
What's the underlying motivation of the lobby? Is it religious in nature? Is it similar to the way war hawks are sort of militaristic in nature? Is it nationalistic in nature? What's if you were to describe this loose coalition of people, what would you say?
Je vais t'enrouler la question après qu'on va revenir parce que on va avoir oublié c'est quoi la question qu'il a demandé, mais on va déjà avoir la réponse. Oh boy, je suis loin. Ouais, je suis quand même loin. On va s'essayer pareil. Espérons que les goons tuent tout le monde jusqu'à temps qu'on arrive. S'ils sont là, bien sûr. À date, j'ai pas remarqué que j'ai un packet loss. Ce qui pourrait indiquer que les goons sont là. Mais je sais pas comment ça marche le packet loss. Je sais que ça marche pour les boss. Le plupart du temps, non. C'était quand même random, le gars, à la fin, à la sortie, qui est comme couru dans le champ de mine, il est mort. Pauvre gars, man. Il devait être perdu un peu, là. Tommy qui courait dans le champ. Je pense pas souvent. Des coups de feu au loin. Je pense pas souvent que par ici, je suis pas sûr de. Est-ce que je pourrais tomber sur quelqu'un? Ça, c'est du monde qui teste les goons, ça, là. J'ai rien entendu tirer. J'ai bien aimé le spot que j'ai poussé par tantôt. Deux grenades de même. Pourquoi qu'il a lancé deux grenades? Ça peut être des players qui se battent d'abord là. Une grenade, j'aurais dit peut-être qu'ils testent les goons, mais là deux. Je sais pas pourquoi ils voudraient les tester deux fois. Ok, j'arrive au. Ah, je savais même pas que j'étais ici. Je pensais que j'étais plus vers le. Jusqu'à bunker que ça. J'ai hâte de voir c'est quoi l'histoire en arrière des goons. C'est comme pourquoi ils choisissent ces occasions, ces places-là pour se tenir. Peut-être qu'ils n'ont pas pensé plus que ça, mais je me dis, il y a peut-être une histoire derrière dans le lore. En haut des roches ici. tout cas, ça grenade en esti, là. Oh fuck, c'est les goons. C'est les goons. Qu'est-ce qu'il fait là, man? Je l'ai jamais vu jusqu'ici. C'est pour ça qu'il faisait aucun bruit, c'est... Comment il s'appelle, lui, donc? Le sniper. Bird Eye, man. Ils sont où ces chums? Ils vont-tu me pousser aussi, tu penses? Ouais. Fuck, man! Qu'est-ce que je sais, dude, avec les BT, dude? J'aurais dû juste continuer de tirer, man. J'aurais dû juste vider mon chargeur dessus. Man, comment je l'ai pas tué là-dessus, dude? Comment qu'il est pas mort, man? Gros, je l'ai pogné au moins 4 fois, là. Ça doit être le hit rag, man. Ça n'a pas rapport, là. J'aurais juste continuer de tirer, man. Ça n'a aucun rapport, cette game-là, des fois, là, pour vrai, là. Aucun asti de rapport, man. Ridicule, man.
Well, first of all, I think you have to distinguish
Mais moi, j'en ai tué un. J'aurais dû tuer les deux pour être franc, là.
There are a huge number of
C'est
Christian
ridicule aussi qu'ils sachent exactement t'es où.
committed to Israel no matter what, right? And then there are
Ça, je vais m'en remonter un autre SVDS de
the
même.
Jews, they're obviously the most important of those two groups in the Israel lobby. But you know, one of the arguments that
En plus,
we
j'en ai un autre
made
ici.
in the book is that you should not call it the Jewish lobby.
Incroyable.
Because it's not populated just by Jews, and Christian Zionists are an important part of that lobby. But furthermore, there are a good number of Jews who are opposed to the lobby and the policies that the lobby purveys. And there are a number of Jews who are prominent anti-Zionists, right? So, and they're obviously not in the lobby. Or if you take a group like Jewish Voice for Peace, right? Jewish Voice for Peace is not in the lobby. So it's wrong to call it a Jewish lobby. But with regard to the American Jews who are in that lobby, I think that really this is all about nationalism. It's not so much religion. Many of those Jews who are influential in the lobby are not religious in any meaningful sense of that term, but they self-identify as Jewish in the sense that they feel they're part of a Jewish nation. And that in addition to being an American, right, they are part of this tribe, this nation called Jews, and that they have a responsibility to push the United States in ways that
C'est une bonne
support
chance de les tuer, là.
the Jewish
J'avais tué le
state.
pire à tuer, man, en
I
premier.
think that's what drives most, if not almost all, the Jews. This is not to say there's not a religious dimension for some of them, but I think that the main connection is much more tribal in nature.
So I had a conversation with Benjamin Netanyahu, and he said fundamentally, if you're anti-Zionist, you're anti-Semitic. So the Zionist
4 balles,
project
man, direct
is
dessus. Je sais pas qu'est-ce.
tied to the hip to the Jewish project. What do you
Ça n'a
have
pas
to
fait
say
assez
to
de
that?
damage for some reason, I guess.
Look, you can define
Moi, je pense que ça a pas.
anti-Semitism
Il y a eu un hit rag issue là-dessus, là.
any way you want, right? And you can
Mais j'aurais dû.
define anti-Semitism
j'aurais dû
to
tirer plus que ça.
incorporate anti-Zionism.
Je sais pas pourquoi j'arrête de tirer des fois, man.
And
Les boss, là, faut
I
pas
think
t'arrêter de
we've
tirer. Tu
reached the
fucking.
point where anti-Semitism
Faut vraiment que tu vides ton chargeur
is
dessus. Fuck
identified
it, man.
today, not just with anti-Zionism, but with criticism of Israel. if you criticize Israel, some people will say, you're an anti-Semite. And if that's your definition of anti-Semitism, it's taken an important term and stretched it to the point where it's meaningless.
Ok, ouais, on a eu notre chance, on aurait pu
So
tuer.
when Steve and I wrote the book,
Il est encore là. On est encore là, je sais pas. On va essayer.
all sorts of people said that we were
Ah oui,
anti-Semites.
c'est ça que j'ai parti. Non, c'est des goniques.
But what they meant was you're criticizing the lobby, you're criticizing Israel, and therefore you're an anti-Semite. Okay, if that's what an anti-Semite is, somebody who criticizes Israel, probably half the Jewish community, if not more in the United States, is anti-Semitic. And of course, you get into all these crazy
C'est bon à savoir qu'il peut être jusque-là, man.
Jews and anti-Semites because they're.
Je pense que c'est vraiment le meilleur spot pour pousser, là, c'est par l'arrière, comme ça, dans le village de...
I don't think they're anti-Semitic at all.
Dans le village des...
you can argue they're misguided, that's
Sunken
fine.
Village.
But many of these people are Jewish and proud of the fact that they're Jewish. They just don't believe that nationalism and Jewish nationalism is a force that should be applauded. And you want to understand that in the American context, there is a rich tradition of anti-Zionism, right? And these were not people who were anti-Semites, if you go back to the 30s, 40s, 50s. And the same thing was even true in Europe. There were all sorts of European Jews who were opposed to Zionism.
Whatever.
Were they anti-Semites? I don't think so. But we've gotten to the point now where people are so interested in stopping any criticism of Israel that they wield this weapon of
double check encore, là, mais les gars, ils avaient l'air d'être là en esti sur Woods.
So loosely,
the
term has kind of lost meaning. So I think Netanyahu is wrong-headed to equate anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism.
Alan Dershowitz was one of the people that called you specifically anti-Semitic. So just...
Il est arrivé vite, man. En plus, Knight, là, il a comme pas perdu une petite seconde quand j'ai tué son chum, mon gars. Là. Il s'est envenu le full pin.
Hope for healthy discourse about U.S. relationships with Israel between you and Alan Dershowitz.
On va voir ce que ça donne, celle-là.
Well, I think until there is a settlement of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, there's no hope of putting an end to this nonsense, right?
So these are just uses of terms to kind of cheat your way through the discourse.
It's
shortcut.
No, it's to silence people. Right. It's very, very important to understand that one of the lobby's principal goals is to make sure we don't have an open discourse, a freewheeling discourse about Israel, because they understand, people in the lobby understand that if you have an open discourse, Israel will end up looking very bad, right? You don't want to talk about the occupation. You don't want to talk about how Israel was created, right? All these subjects are ones that
en fait, Bird Eye, il faisait pas aucun son. Hein. On l'entendait courir.
See, just to go to the present crisis.
Quand je me battais tantôt dans Customs, ça a vraiment juste bugué ça. Je l'entendais plus.
And what happened on October 7th is a disaster. One of the first things that happens is that people begin to ask the question,
tirer jusqu'à temps qu'il n'y ait plus rien. Là.
Right. What's the root cause of this problem? This is a disaster.
Caché là-dessus, c'était pas une bonne idée. Parce qu'en plus, je pense que tu peux tirer à travers ces arbres-là.
To make sure it doesn't happen again. So we can work to shut it down and then make sure it doesn't happen again. Mm-hmm. But once you start talking about the root causes, right, you end up talking about how...
All right, on va l'essayer encore. La maison. Ah, ok, ouais, je suis sûr. C'est un assez bon spawn by. C'est pas le meilleur, mais c'est un bon spawn. Là. Je vais faire le même chemin, je pense. Si tu vas prendre Bird Eye, là, il va se mettre à courir vers moi. Parce qu'ils vont tous s'en venir un par un. Là, je sais qu'au moins, j'ai appris qu'ils peuvent rusher, là. Jusque fucking loin, man. Ratco, là. Pas le temps de niaiser avec ça, moi. C'est ça qu'il y a des mines là-bas. Je vais descendre là, mais. Qu'est-ce que c'est? Parce qu'ils sont pas là. Ben trop de coups de feu pour que ce soit eux autres. Là. J'ai tellement manqué ma chance, man. C'était eux autres, ça, là. Dur à dire, hein? Je vais faire one tap de loin, c'est sûr que c'est eux autres, hein, mais. Où la trappe? C'est un scav, ça, je vais même pas tirer. Pas loin, il y en a 6, hein? Mais sorti, là. Outskirt. Ouais. Ouais, je sais pas, hein. Peut-être qu'il pourrait spawner un petit peu plus loin. Ça peut-tu? Je sais pas si des scavs seraient là, c'est ça, je comprends pas. Je connais pas encore assez bien le comportement des goons, pis qu'est-ce qui se passe avec les autres. C'est un peu ça qu'on essaie de faire aussi en même temps, là. Ok. On est tué un, mais j'en reviens pas. Ça se fait vraiment, là. C'est sûr que je peux les tuer. J'ai quasiment tué 2 même. C'est entièrement de ma faute que j'ai pas tué le deuxième. Passer à droite. Oh, la petite signature là. Ça bouge en plus. Le fucking signature. C'est dans les airs? Traverse la rue. Check notre back vite fait. Les scavs. As-tu entendu? Ah, tu m'avais entendu. Ou du scav, man. Me faire repérer, là. Une balle, ça. C'est pas moi qui ai tué ça. C'est peut-être un player mort, ça, hein? Non, un scav. Quelqu'un qui s'en vient vers moi. On va tuer du monde au village. Hey, c'est un player, ça. Ouais, un peu. C'est ça. Ouais. On a pas mal de ici pour une petite gang de players, hein. Ah, il y a du sang partout, man. Je pense que tous les players sont... cute. Ah, qui est gros, hein? Oh, wow! Le même scav qui les a tués, dude. Bon. Okay. La mine, il se prend souvent là, j'ai remarqué. Hein. Ah, barnac, ça m'a fait faire le saut pendant une seconde, cette tache rouge là dans mon écran. Là. Ça vaut quand même cher. Pas tant que ça, pas tant que ça. Euh. De la merde, ça. Oh, on a le... Faut pas toujours être chanceux, hein. Ouais, j'ai eu ma chance, là. J'aurais vraiment pu toutes les tuer, là. Il m'en restait 2. Et le Sidra, ben... Il m'a eu. On top à tuer. Puis en plus, à cause de son esti de masque, c'est vraiment top avec la thermale. Là. Ça, c'est tant tabac. Je peux m'ajouter là-dedans. Et puis ça, je pense pas que ça vaut tant la peine. Ça, je peux mettre ici, voilà. Oh, Woods est quand même pas mal de fun comme map, là. En particulier quand t'as des thermales, là. Non. Pas de temps précis, là. Je vais voir si je regarde le point. Ah, il est pas tombé. J'ai déjà vu des scabs là. ouvert. C'est quand même rare à trouver, je trouve, la ZB14 à cette heure-là. Dans cette wipe-ci, j'en ai trouvé peut-être une. What the fuck? Fuck. Ça torche un SVDS en ce cas, man. Je sais pas s'ils sont encore ici. Ils ont switch de map. Je sais pas si d'habitude ils spawn. Puis après ça ils switch de map. En tout cas ça me fait le cul, man. Tu sais, je me suis battu 2 fois contre aujourd'hui. Ce qui est mieux que dans les 3-4 derniers jours. Pourquoi je suis si lourd que ça? Je pense que j'ai qui est si lourd, c'est le gaz. C'est une tank à gaz, c'est quand même lourd.
Israel was created, right? And that means telling a story that is not pretty about how the Zionists conquered Palestine.
No.
And number two, it means talking about the occupation, right? It's not like Hamas attacked on October 7th because there were just a bunch of anti-Semites who hated Jews and wanted to kill Jews. This is not, Nazi Germany, right? This is directly related to the occupation and to what was going on inside of Gaza. And it's not in Israel's interest or the lobby's interest to have an open discourse about what the Israelis have been doing to the Palestinians since, I would say, roughly 1903 when the second Aliyah came to Israel. or came to what was then Palestine, right?
Best
We want to talk
items.
about that. And we don't want to
Trade.
talk about, from the
Let's go.
lobby's point of view, the influence that the lobby has, right?
Je pense à
It's better
ça.
from the lobby's point of view if most Americans think
Variables.
that American support of Israel is just done for all the right moral and strategic reasons, not because of the lobby. And when John Mearsheimer and Steve Walt come along and say, you have to understand that this special relationship is due in large part to the lobby's influence, that is not an argument that people in the lobby want to hear. So the point is, you have to go to great lengths for all these reasons. You have to go to great lengths to silence people like me and Steve Walt. And one of the ways to do that is to call us anti-Semites. I think the chapter or the section of the book where we talk about this charge of anti-Semitism is called The Great Silencer. That's what we call the charge of anti-Semitism, the Great Silencer.
PS,
Who wants to be called an anti-Semite, especially in the wake of the Holocaust? Do I want to be called an anti-Semite? Oh my God, no. So it's very effective. But, you know, it is important to talk about these issues, in my humble opinion. And I think if we had talked about these issues way back when, it would have gone a long way towards
Non, reste rien qu'un, man.
maybe
Ouais,
getting a
j'en ai
two-state
tué rien
solution,
qu'un. Il m'en
which I
reste deux.
think was the best alternative here.
It's
J'aimerais
complicated.
faire
and I
une petite
wonder
passe
if
de
you
thé
can
vite fait.
comment on
Ça sera pas long, je reviens tout le monde.
because
Yeah, Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Game over. Come and get me, bastard.
I don't care.
And I have to go to the bathroom. I say, I'll be right back.
that, you know, this idea that Jews run everything, run the world, or this kind of cabal. And, you know, it's also very true that people who are legitimately anti-Semitic are also critics of Israel in the same kind of way. And so it's such a complicated landscape in which to have discussions because, you know, even people like David Duke, who are, you know, racist, don't sound racist on the surface. I haven't listened to him enough, but like, you know, there's dog whistles. It's a complicated space in which to have discussions because I mean, I wonder if you can sort of speak to that. Because there's this silencing effect of calling everybody anti-Semitic, but it's also true that there is anti-Semitism in the world. Like, there is a sizable population of people that hate Jews. There's probably a sizable population of people who hate Muslims too. But, you know,
A lot of hate out there.
a lot of hate out there. But the hatred of Jews has like a long history, and so you have like, you know, Rolling Stones have a set of great hits, and there's just a set of great hits of the ways conspiracy theories that you can make up about the Jews that are used as part of the hatred. So there's like nice templates for that, and I just wonder if you can comment on operating as a historian, as an analyst, as a strategic thinker in this kind of space.
Yeah, we obviously, when we wrote the article, which we did before the book, gave this subject a great deal of thought. I mean, what you say just now is music to our ears. I'm talking for me and about me and Steve. I mean, I think that, you know, your point about dog whistles is correct. Look, we went to great lengths to make it clear that this is not a cabal. It's not a conspiracy. And in fact, in a very important way, the lobby operates out in the open, right? They brag about their power, right? And this was true before we wrote the article, right? And we said in the article and the book, and you heard me say it here. First of all, it's not a Jewish lobby, right? Secondly, it's not a cabal, right? It's an American interest group. And
the American system is designed such that interest groups are perfectly legal and some of them are super effective.
I mean, you hit the nail right on the head. That's exactly right. And, and there was nothing that we said that was anti-Semitic by any reasonable definition of that term. And, huge numbers of Jews have known me and Steve over the years, and nobody ever said that we were anti-Semitic before March 2006 when the article appeared, because we're not anti-Semitic. But look, you've got this interest group, right, that has a significant influence on American policy and on Israeli policy, and you want to talk about it. It's just important to talk about it. It's important for Jews, right, in the United States, for Jews in Israel, to talk about this. The idea that you want to silence critics is not a smart way to go about doing business, in my opinion. If we were wrong, if Steve and I were so wrong and our arguments were so foul, they could have easily exposed those arguments. They could have gone into combat with us in terms of the marketplace of ideas and easily knocked us down. The problem was that our arguments were quite powerful. And instead of engaging us and defeating our arguments, they wanted to silence us. And this is not good, right? It's not good for Israel. It's not good for the United States. And I would argue in the end, if anything, it's going to foster anti-Semitism. I think you don't want to run around telling people that they can't talk about Israel without being called an anti-Semite. It's just not, it's not healthy in terms of the issue that you're raising, right? But I still agree with you that it is a tricky issue. I don't want to make light of that. I know that there's this piece of literature out there called the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. And I fully understand that if you're not careful, you can come close to writing volume 2 of the protocol. But I don't believe that we wrote anything that was even close to that. And again, I think that a healthy debate on the issues that we were raising would have been not only in America's interest, but it would have been in Israel's interest.
Yeah, I mean, underneath it all is just, I wonder why there's so much hate against groups, why it's such a sticky way of thinking. Not just tribalism, like proud of your country and kind of hating another country, but really deeply hating, like hating in a way where it's part of your identity kind of hate.
Well, just to make a general point on this issue, in our conversation here today, you often talk about individual leaders, and the word individual often pops up in your vocabulary.
Yes.
I believe that we are ultimately social animals before we are individuals. I believe we're born into tribes, we're heavily socialized, and that we carve out space for our individualism. But we are part of tribes or social groups or nations, call them what you want, ethnic groups, religious groups. But the fact is that these tribes often crash into each other. And when they crash into each other, they end up hating each other. If you go to a place like Bosnia, right, the Croats and the Serbs, oh my God, and then throw in the Bosniaks, which is the term for Bosnian Muslims, and, Muslims, Croats, Serbs, and the tribes, hate each other. And in a funny way, that hatred almost never goes away. And I guess there are some exceptions to that. If you look at the Germans after World War II, they've gone a long way towards reducing, I wouldn't want to say completely eliminating, but reducing a lot of the hatred that existed between Germans and their neighbors. But that's really kind of an anomalous case. I mean, you go around East Asia today, and the hatred of Japan in a place like China, the hatred of Japan in a place like Korea, just not to be underestimated. And but I think a lot of it just has to do with the fact that you're dealing with social groups that have crashed into each other. at one point or another, and there are those lingering effects. And by the way, this gets back to our discussion a few minutes ago about trying to get a two-state solution between the Palestinians and the Israeli Jews now that you have had this horrible war, which is ongoing.
It's interesting to ask, to go back to World War II. Now, you said you studied Nazi Germany in the 30s from a perspective of maybe offensive realism. But just to look at the Holocaust, it's sometimes popular in public discourse today to compare certain things to the Holocaust. People have compared the Hamas attack on Israel to the Holocaust, saying things like it's the biggest attack on Jews since the Holocaust, which kind of implies that there's a comparison. People have made that same comparison in the other direction. What do you make of this comparison? Is it comparable? Is the use of the Holocaust have any accuracy in comparisons of modern day international politics?
Is it possible that you could have another genocide? Yes. And I would argue that what you had in Rwanda was a genocide, right? The Holocaust is not the only genocide. I believe the word genocide is used too loosely today. And as you know, lots of people, and I mean lots of people who are pro-Palestinian, accuse the Israelis of engaging in genocide in Gaza. I think what the Israelis are doing in Gaza represents a massacre. I would use that term.
Rwanda, c'est reconnu comme étant un génocide, pardon.
And the fact that they've been indiscriminate in terms of how they've been bombing Gaza. But I would not use the word genocide. For me, a genocide is where one side attempts to eliminate another group from the planet.
Littéralement, ce qui est arrivé au Rwanda.
What happened with the Holocaust was clearly a genocide, and that the Germans were bent on destroying all of European Jewry. And if they could have gotten their hands on Jews outside of Europe, they would have murdered them as well. That's a genocide. And I think with the Hutus and the Tutsis, you had a similar situation. I think with the Turks and the Armenians during World War I, that was a genocide. But I have a rather narrow definition of what a genocide is, and I don't think there are many cases that qualify as a genocide. The Holocaust certainly does, okay? Now, what Hamas did doesn't even come close to what happened to European Jewry between, let's say, 1939 and 1945, although I date the start of the Holocaust to 1941, if we were, looking at it closely. But let's just say 1939 when they invade Poland. From 1939 to 1945, what Hamas did pales in comparison. It's hard to believe anybody would make that argument, right? Yes, a lot of Jews died, but hardly any compared to the number that died, at the hands of the Germans. I mean, it just no parallel at all. And furthermore, Hamas was in no position to kill all of the Jews in the Middle East. Just not going to happen.
Yeah, but there's also levels of things, using Germans using human skin for lamps. There's just levels of evil in this
human
world.
skins for lamps, man.
That's not what Hamas is doing.
No.
I mean, I want to be very clear here. I am not justifying Hamas's killing of civilians, okay? Not for 1 second. But I'm just saying, and by the way, just to go to the Israelis and what they're doing in Gaza, right? As I said to you before, I do believe that is a massacre, and I believe that's to be condemned, the killing of civilians. This is not legitimate collateral damage. They're directly punishing the population. But I would not call that a genocide, right? And I would not compare that to the Holocaust for 1 second. I just want to be very clear on that.
Do you think if Israel could, they would avoid the death of any civilians? So you're saying there's some degree of punishment, of
No,
collective
they're
anger.
purposely killing civilians. This is the iron wall. They're trying to beat the Palestinians into submission, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's no way you kill this many civilians if you're trying to precisely take out Hamas fighters. And by the way, the Israeli spokesman, the IDF spokesman, has explicitly said that we are not pursuing precision bombing and that what we are doing is trying to, maximize the amount of destruction and damage that we can inflict on the Palestinians.
Ouais.
And I think this is a major mistake on the part of Israel. First of all, it ends up being a moral stain on your reputation, number one. And number two, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. The Palestinians are not going to roll over and submit to Israeli domination of their life. So, the whole concept of the Iron Wall, Jabotinsky's term, was misguided. And by the way, if you look at what the Israelis are doing, they're trying to do two things. One is the Iron Wall, and that's where you punish the civilian population in Gaza and get them to submit.
Okay.
The other thing that they're trying to do is get Hamas. They want to destroy Hamas. And the belief there is that if they destroy Hamas, they've solved the problem. But as many Israelis know, including people on the hard right, even if you destroy Hamas, they are going to be replaced by another group, another resistance group, and that resistance group will employ terror.
Yeah, I think you've said that other terrorist organizations have used the situation in Palestine as a kind of a recruitment mechanism for a long time.
Mm.
Osama bin Laden made it clear that this was one of his principal reasons for attacking the United States, right?
C'est quoi?
And the United States attacked back and got us into a 20-year war.
Mm. Bon. C'est qu'on est ici, là. Ok. Quand même loin pour elle. Je pense que là, je suis genre le plus loin que j'aurais pu être. Là. J'ai pas eu de packet loss. Il y a eu du lag, mais c'était pas un packet loss. Mourir ici. Ouais, j'ai vu quoi, mais... Un ping qui arrête pas de monter. Bizarrement. Monter un peu dans la montagne. Sturman. On passe au village après là. Tout se battre contre Sturman. Il vient de tuer quelqu'un, c'est clair là. Je savais même pas que le premier que j'ai tué c'est Bird Eye, mais je pensais que ça allait être le dernier que j'allais tuer. Parce qu'il est tout le temps caché loin là. Faut qu'il remette son... C'est ça qu'il remette son chargeur plus vite quand il check là. What the hell, man? C'est tellement un beau son, ça, là. Je sais pas si tu peux avoir Sturman pis les goons. Là, j'ai entendu quand même à gauche, mais... Je pense que c'est le son du gun qui tire, man. Il fait comme des cryptements après, là. Oh, 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 oh. Oh, yes, 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 yes. Ok, ok. Ok, ça c'est les goons, 100%. Non, pas 100%, là, mais ça sonne comme les goons en esti, man. C'est ma chance encore, man. Je sais pas, dude, ça sonne vraiment comme des goons, ça, là. Oh fuck, l'adrénaline se met à monter, mon chum. Je sais plus quoi faire, man, j'ai peur, là. J'aurais aimé ça qu'il se monte la face encore, là. Oh fuck, il m'a fait tirer dessus. Pas de faire le tour, là. C'est ma stratégie encore. C'est un scam normal, ça. Est-ce que c'était fait, man? Parce que là, il te snipe à 300 mètres, dude. YOLO. On a l'air d'avoir été gros sur d'autres choses, donc... What? C'était peut-être pas les... C'était peut-être pas eux autres? Il y a un scave même qui a jasé. Fait que c'était pas eux. Puis ils ont spawné au convoi. Nice game. Je suis pas sûr que c'était les... Je suis pas sûr que c'était eux autres, là. En même temps, je me suis peut-être trompé, là. Ça tient en esti pourtant. Washerman, I guess. chier, hein? Attends un peu, je termine, madame. Il est probablement déjà mort. Man, c'est quoi les coups de feu j'ai entendu, là? Je comprends pas, là. What? Hey, c'était... Ça arrêtait pas de tirer, là. C'était les guns des goons. Ok, nice. Tout looter en même temps et tout ça. Bizarre, hein? Maudite lampe, man, qui me fait tout le temps sursauter. Mentalement, bien sûr. Ah, mon chum, ça a été cleané raide ici, là. Un petit aspirateur, là, qui a passé ici. La table est vide, man. Moi, ça m'étonnerait pas qu'il y avait un cheater dans le lobby, là. Il a tout cleané les goons, il a sûrement cleané le Sturman et tout. Ça m'étonne qu'il m'ait pas tué pour ma thermale, là, non? Peut-être pas. Ça a été vraiment clean, ça, ici. Ah. Il est mort dans son spawn, lui. Nice, tu vois, ils sont là, man. Ils sont où? Je comprends pas, ils ont un gros quelqu'un. Là, je pense qu'il y a un cheater qui a passé, man. Tu peux pas juste tuer des goons de même. En bas, sont où les goons, man? Ouais, j'ai pas vu leur body aux goons. Voilà. Fuck, ils sont là. Ils sont à ma droite. Ils sont dans les montagnes à ma droite, les goons. Je sais pas si ça veut dire qu'ils me voient, eux autres. Je me suis jamais battu contre les goons dans ce coin ici. J'aimerais vraiment ça me débarrasser de ce deuxième player-là avant de me battre avec eux autres, là. va essayer de sauver le gars. Comment je pourrais bien les tuer, man? Spoté, mais... J'essaie de les baiter, genre, mais... Je suis pas capable, man. Je sais pas si c'est quelqu'un, ça. Si tu vois rien dans cette game-là, pareil. J'entends rien qu'un, pardon. Pas de place fucking bâtard pour se battre contre eux autres, man. Whatever, YOLO. Je sais qu'ils sont là. On en lance un autre. Je vais reprendre mon souffle. J'ai plus d'arme stam. Là, j'aurais fini ça, je vais peut-être aller looter le gars que j'ai tué avant, là, mais... J'ai-tu tué Bird Eye encore, genre? C'était comme le dernier en vie. Ça bouge pas, ça. C'est mort. Je l'ai tué. J'ai tué Bird Eye encore, man. T'es-tu sérieux, dude, de sti? De toutes les goûts, j'ai appris. Ben, les 3, man, j'ai tué Bird Eye, dude. C'est ça, je vais me faire rusher, là. C'est sûr que je l'ai tué parce qu'il gueulait, puis là, y'a plus rien qui gueule. La question, c'est sont où ses amis, man? C'est pas mon eau. Shit. Hey, ça me fait chier si c'est vraiment le dernier qui restait, là. Elles sont où les autres? C'est ça que j'ai pas compris d'abord. Je pense que j'ai entendu de quoi bouger. Peux-tu qui crie pas? Je sais pas sont où les autres. Je vois même pas avec ma thermale s'il serait pas loin, là. Où est-ce qu'il aurait pu se faire aggro, tu penses? J'ai aucune idée, man. Ouais. Mais genre, j'ai tué Bird Eye 2 fois, j'ai pas tué les autres encore. Pop une mule puis du G6 après, puis on va s'en aller. Là, je vais m'essayer pareil, là. Je sais pas, j'ai tué Bird Eye 2 fois, man. C'est un scave. Minutes. Ça va être tight, mais on va se rendre, je pense. Ça fait quand même chier là pour elle, mais. En même temps, genre, c'est mieux que rien. Ils m'ont bien tombé dessus, man, les autres. Ils sont rendus là-bas, là, somehow. Je sais pas s'ils seraient rendus où. Ce qui me dit qu'ils sont encore en vie, c'est parce que j'ai pas vu leur body comme tel. En même temps, il aurait pu être aggro, genre fucking loin. Mon corps, il était bon, là. C'est quand même vraiment chier, là. D'avoir tué Bird Eye 2 fois au lieu de tuer Bird Eye puis mettre ton Big Pipe ou Knight, là, whatever, man. En plus, j'ai trouvé un dog tag d'un gars qui s'est fait tuer par Knight. J'ai eu Bird Eye, man, avec une grenade en plus. J'ai pas le temps d'aller checker Sturman. Malheureusement. Ça a pris ben trop de temps à chercher Bird Eye. Ben, chercher les goons. Mais j'ai appris quoi encore là? Je savais pas qu'il va se rendre jusque là, ces gars-là, les goons. Ce qui est bon, là, c'est une autre leçon. Ok, pendant que je tourne dans ce game-là, au moins, tu sais, même si tu fais pas les objectifs que tu voulais faire, t'as souvent une leçon à apprendre du raid. Qu'est-ce qui s'est mal passé ou quel nouvel élément de la game que tu t'as appris. Attends-tu quoi à ma droite, là? Imagine-tu, 2 minutes de la fin, man, y'a un gars qui campe là, je serais même pas surpris, là. Mais non. Fait que je pense que je l'ai tué avec la grenade en plus.
That cost the lives of millions of people, not American, but human beings.
Yeah.
Ouais.
And
Ah non, SVDS, je l'ai tué.
Torture. Yeah.
Quand j'ai regardé avec la
No, I
thermale,
think
il était là. Puis j'ai tiré,
if
puis
you
j'ai tiré à la
look
bonne
at
place.
How we reacted to 9/11 and how the Israelis are reacting to what happened on October 7th,
Quand même épique.
there's quite a bit of similarity.
J'ai été surpris de toute la grenade, là, je veux dire.
Both sides,
J'ai lancé au
the
son.
Israeli
C'est
side and the
comme...
American side, are enraged, right? And they lash out, and they go on a rampage. And the end result is not good.
Is there a capacity within Israel or within the United States after 9/11
Un beau
to
SR et
do
tout.
something approximating turn the other cheek?
4 est quand même nice,
Oh.
mais c'est...
Understanding
gear
the
dessus,
root of terror is hate, and fighting that hate with, not to sound naive, but compassion.
Well, I don't think in either case you're going to turn the other cheek. I think
Well, what I mean by that is some limited, powerful military response, but very limited.
Yeah, coupled with a smart political strategy.
Political strategy, diplomacy.
Yeah, that's what they should have done.
Yeah.
Right.
But is there
Ce
capacity for that?
sac-là, si je me
Or
trompe
from
pas,
your
quand même
offensive
cher.
realism perspective, it's just the odds
non, pas
are
détruire, mais
really low.
y a rien à faire avec ça.
Well, from my offensive
Que-
realist perspective, or my realist perspective, that's what you should do.
On le vend.
Right.
Okay.
Comme 200 000. là.
My view is states are rational actors. They should be cunning, right? They should think about the strategic situation they're in and choose the appropriate response. And
C'est le Raptor qui est là-dessus en
what
plus.
happens, and this is why my theory is not always correct, is that sometimes states are not rational and they misbehave. I would argue in the Israeli case that it would have been good after October 7th or starting on October 7th if the United States had tried to hold the Israelis back and countenanced a more
Logistique, ici.
moderate
Puis
response.
Double
more
Boss 2.
take
un
some
Trimada
time
qui traîne
just to
quelque
think
part
about
aussi.
how to deal with this problem instead of lashing out. I think, given what happened to the Israelis, given how shocked they were, given the level of fear, given the level of rage, they were going to
J'en ai
lash
un
out.
pop on and rate
And
que
I
j'aimerais
don't
peut-être
believe
utiliser. Là.
that was in their interest. I think it would have been
Qu'est-ce que j'ai fait avec?
would have made sense to think about it and to think about a smarter strategy than they're
Peut-être
now
pas ça.
employing. And I think, the Americans blew it. The Americans gave them a bear hug and a green
Ça vaut
light
cher, ça.
and said, we'll give you all the weaponry you
Ouais,
need and
ça
go
vaut
out
assez
and
cher.
do it. And I don't
pas
think
de
that
raison
was a smart thing to
de
do.
le garder.
Look,
Oh, il y a
in the
des
wake
bonnes
of
balles en plus
October
là-dedans.
7th, the Israelis had no good strategy.
C'est bonne balle là-dedans.
Right?
Oh,
It's not like there's a magic formula.
Back then,
They just
61,
didn't
on
see
dira
it.
pas
We should
non,
have
hein?
told them what the magic formula was. Right? That's not true. They were, in a sense,
Regarde
caught
là-dedans,
between a
la
rock and a hard
993,
place
non,
in terms
la
of
balle
what
de
to
cul.
do. But there's smarter things and dumber things, and I think the Israelis lashed out in ways that are counterproductive. I think, going on a rampage and, killing huge numbers of civilians is not obviously
Polygram ne le
morally
regarderait
wrong,
probablement pas non
but
plus.
it's also just not in their strategic interest.
Ça,
Right?
ça vaut cher, MK12. Quand
'Cause
même.
it's not going to buy them anything, right? And in fact, it's going to cost them, right? Because people all over the planet are turning against Israel. I saw, an Israeli think tank today that has been tracking protests around the world. Gave some figures for
des
what
très bonnes
it
pièces qu'il y a
looked
là-dedans.
like between October 7th and October 13th in terms of the number
Oh, ce grip-là,
of,
ça vaut. C'est pas bon, ce
protests
grip-là.
around the world that were
Ah,
pro-Israel
ouais, man,
versus
ça se vend quand même bien, là.
pro-Palestine. And then it looked at the numbers from
ben, regarde,
October
t'as la
13th up to the present.
M8500
And I think the
K1.
numbers were 69%
Ça,
were
je pense que ça vaut quand même bien.
pro-Palestinian in the first 6 days after
Ça,
October
tu peux
7th.
même pas le mettre sur le marché.
69%. And I think
C'est excellent.
31%, take
excellent.
these numbers with a grain of salt, 31% were
Carbine,
pro-Israel. So
pas
I
tant
think it's
cher.
69 and 31.
Ça, pas tant cher. On va de reste.
And since then, since October 13th, if you look at the number of protests around the world, 95% have been pro-Palestinian and 5% have been pro-Israel.
So I saw you're fucking nice too,
and
là.
what this tells you is that public opinion around the world has shifted
Oh,
against Israel.
fucking nice.
And if you look at some of the demonstrations in places like London and Washington,
Pas perf, mais
DC,
pas mal
it's truly
nice.
amazing the number of people who are coming out in support of the Palestinians. And all of this, again, is just to support my point that it was just not smart for Israel to launch this bombing campaign, right? You can make an argument for going after Hamas and doing it in a surgical way or as surgical a way as possible. But that's not what they did. And again, my point to you is I think that this punishment campaign is not going to work strategically. In other words, they're not going to beat the Palestinians into submission. They're not going to finish off Hamas. And at the same time, by pursuing this strategy, they're doing huge damage to their reputation around the world.
Well, I just, in the wake of October 7th, given the geopolitical context, I think there's a lot of leverage to be the great ethical superpower that demonstrate power without killing any civilians, and use that leverage, diplomatic leverage, to push forward something like Abrahamic Accords with more nations, with Saudi Arabia, push for peace aggressively, peace agreements, this kind of stuff, economic relationships, all of this kind of stuff, and thereby pressure the Palestinian Authority, you know, towards perhaps a two-state solution.
No, but I think what you're missing here, just in the Israeli case, is that the Israeli government is not interested in a two-state solution. And you want to remember that Benjamin Netanyahu, who looks very hawkish when you look at him in isolation, doesn't look so hawkish when you look at him compared to the rest of the people in his cabinet. Right? He almost looks like a moderate. He's got a lot of people who are way out to the right of him. And these people, and this of course includes Netanyahu, are not in.
Ça a été pour asseoir tout le monde. On a tué 2 fois Bird Eye. J'oublie tout le temps son esti, non. Donc, progrès. On n'a pas été encore capable de tuer les 2 autres. D'après moi, d'ici la fin de la semaine, on doit avoir fini cette quest-là si on continue de grinder de même, puis qu'on n'a pas peur d'utiliser nos thermales, puis les bons guns. Je pense que faut pas y aller de main morte avec eux autres. Donc, c'est ça. Écoute, le but, c'est de streamer à peu près tous les soirs de 7 à 9. Malheureusement, hier soir, ma copine est très malade. Donc, j'ai été obligé de faire l'épicerie seul. Puis, c'était assez demandant. Donc, j'ai décidé de pas streamer. Mais l'épicerie est faite. Donc, demain, je devrais être capable de revenir. Je sais pas. Je sais pas, mais je devrais être capable de revenir. À moins que quelque chose arrive. Qu'on s'attend jamais, tu sais. Pour le moment, le plan, c'est de streamer demain à 7h. Donc, c'est un rendez-vous. On se reparle à très bientôt.
Yeah, Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Game over. Come and get me, bastard.
I don't care.
I have to go to the bathroom. I said,